Dear aspiring dev, the development portion of your developer journey is super important. Learning to code is no small feat. So, how do you start? Do you take the traditional path of going to a college or university and getting an advanced degree? Do you try a coding bootcamp? Or do you try to tackle it all on your own? All of these options have their own pros and cons, and that's what we're going to discuss today. Hi, I'm Bree and welcome back to my channel. I hope you guys are having an awesome day and Happy New Year as well. If this is your first time seeing me, hi, I'm Bree and this is Dear Aspiring Dev, the series where I take new and aspiring developers on the journey from having the dream to getting the job. So first off, I want to say I am so sorry that this video has been a lot later than I expected it to. Unfortunately, at the end of last year, a lot of things came up between life and work, and I really could not find time to go ahead and plan and sit down and record the videos, but I do plan to go ahead and have the remainder of the videos in this series out before the end of this month is over. Determining what method you're going to use to start your developer journey can be super stressful. And I'm sure at some point we've all sat down to weigh the different pros and cons of going to college, maybe trying a boot camp, or seeing if we could just go at it on our own and just become a self-taught developer. As you're doing your research, you will likely find that there are people who have very strong opinions about all of these different methods. But regardless of everyone else's opinion, even my own, you're going to have to assess your own situation and see what's going on in your life so that you can determine the best path for yourself. And I think what you'll find is many times it's not just one specific path that you're going to go down. If you're anything like me, I've done a little bit of all three, but I think most developers at least have a combination of two that they work with. Today we'll discuss the pros and cons and a general comparison of attending a traditional college or university to get a degree, attending a coding boot camp, and being a self-taught developer. And we'll also talk about the areas of efficiency, cost, and just some other general notes that I might have about each method. Nowadays, it seems like just saying that you aspire to go to college for something computer or tech related can be a very polarizing statement. I don't know if you guys have ever seen people on Twitter telling people that they don't have to go to college and get a degree, and some people are very aggressive about it. So I want to say first and foremost, before I get into everything else about college, you do not have to have a college education or an advanced degree to have a fulfilling and profitable career as a software engineer. However, I do believe that everyone is different and everyone aspires for different things. And if higher education is something that you aspire to and something that you want to do, I don't think that people should be shamed for that decision. I only say that because it's happened to me, and I know that a lot of people who have very strong opinions about this topic, some people are very good at telling people that the decisions that they made are stupid, or that they wasted their money. And I don't think it's anybody's place to say that a decision was stupid or that somebody wasted their money if it's a goal that somebody else aspired to. So in my experience, education is something that was very important in my household, and my parents basically instilled in me that I would be going to college after I finished high school. I've talked about my experience multiple times on this channel. I know that college isn't something that's presented to every child when they're younger for a variety of different reasons. My parents were able to assist me with taking out loans for school for whatever scholarships didn't cover, and I know that that is an immense privilege because a lot of people don't have that option, especially today. And if there's anything that I hate, it's logging into my student loan system and seeing how much money I have to pay them every single month. As rocky as my college experience was at times, and as much pain as it caused me at some points in my life, I can honestly say that it is the reason that I was afforded some opportunities that wouldn't have presented themselves otherwise if I didn't have a degree. So let's get into the pros and cons. Let's start with the pros. My first one is opportunity. Like I said a few seconds ago, there are some opportunities that presented themselves to me specifically because I had a degree at all. I know that a lot of companies are changing as times change, and companies are starting to realize that a lot of people are choosing not to go down the route of traditional education. Many companies are taking your experience in lieu of a degree, which is awesome because when they take your experience, you have a better chance of explaining what you know and how you were able to receive the knowledge that you did through the projects that you worked on. There are still some companies, of course, that require a degree, But I would say for the most part, a lot of the bigger ones and even some of the smaller ones, you can use your experience in lieu of a degree. So my second pro is internships. So internships are typically a part of your college experience. I know in my experience, I had to complete at least one internship before I was able to graduate. And internships are great because they are basically your first taste of what it's actually like to be a software engineer. So not only are internships great because it's giving you a taste of what it's like to be a developer, but it's also your first item that you can add to your resume that goes towards your experience. Now, some internships allow people to intern for them even if they're not in a degree program. From what I've seen, a lot of internships actually require that you're completing or in the process of completing some degree. But if you're not, then you might want to take a look at apprenticeships. So apprenticeships are basically the same thing as internships, but they're not exactly tied to your college education or your degree program. So apprenticeships are on the rise, but I wouldn't yet say that they're as popular as internships. So you might have to do a little bit more digging to find apprenticeships. So my next pro is the fact that you have a very in-depth learning experience and you have on-demand help if you need it. So typically semesters in college last a few months, and typically during this few months you are studying one subject or a very specific group of subjects together. Because semesters last a few months, naturally you have a lot more time to dive into the subject. And also, typically with these college courses, they come with a dedicated professor or a teaching staff that you have access to if you have any questions or you need help with assignments and things like that. So learning to code is something that can be really tricky if you've never done it before, and having somebody that you can ask questions to in real time or have them explain things to you in like a little bit of a different manner can be really helpful. And typically with college, even if you can't get your professor during their office hours or during class, there's usually another professor or a dedicated staff to help you out with all of those questions that you might have. So my last pro for college is the fact that typically colleges have career advisors. My college specifically had an entire department that was dedicated to helping you tweak your resume, helping you get internships, and after you graduate, helping you get a job. This is something that I wish I would have used a little bit more actually, but this is a great tool and it usually doesn't cost anything extra. It's typically included in your tuition. Now let's go ahead and get into the cons. So it's no secret that college is super expensive. A lot of schools have pretty high tuition. Even if you go to an in-state school, things can be a little bit less expensive. And of course, there's the option of getting grants and scholarships, but they're not always accessible for everyone. So my next con is the requirement of so many general education credits. So this will vary from school to school, but I remember one full semester where I had to take nothing but general education credits that had nothing to do with my degree program, specifically so I could get enough credits so I could graduate. So these general education credits are going to be your English or your math or any of those other like art subjects that aren't necessarily related to your major and like what you're learning. They make you a fairly well-rounded student, but they don't always contribute directly to what you're actually going to school for. So my next con for college is the amount of time that it takes. College isn't really something where you can just wake up and decide that you want to get a degree and then in 6 months or a year have that degree in your hand. It's something that requires a pretty large investment of your time. So if you're currently working a full-time job, it might be a little bit tricky to juggle college courses on top of life, on top of the work that you're already doing. But if getting a degree is something that's important to you, it doesn't matter how long you take. So let's talk about the efficiency. So I think that college can be very efficient, but no two degree programs are the same. And if there's anybody who knows that, it's me. I had to learn this lesson pretty much the hard way. I would recommend doing some research around the curriculum prior to accepting your place at a school. I would also look for some different jobs or job descriptions that you think that you would be interested in post-college. This is going to be good because you can see based on the job description whether your curriculum is actually going to help you, and you can use that job description to help you learn more and have something to look forward to while you're in college. So I have 2 little notes about college as well as I wrap things up with it. So the first one is, If you want to go to school for tech or computer science, just do it. Don't listen to what everybody else is saying about how it's not required. Great, things aren't required, but you can still do them anyway. Do what's right for you. I personally want to further my education to my master's and PhD. Will it directly help me in my career? Maybe, maybe not. But is that going to stop me from doing it? No. And my second thing is a big tip and something that I think that I would go back and change if I could. If you are pursuing a 4-year degree, consider attending a community college at least for your general education courses. 99% of the time, the general education courses in the community colleges are going to be the same as they are in universities, and the only difference is they're going to be cheaper. I personally would rather spend my money on the courses that I know are going to help me get a job rather than all of the other auxiliary courses that I don't exactly need, but basically just needed for the credits to graduate. Now let's talk about coding bootcamp. Coding bootcamps are an extremely popular alternative to traditional college. If you've thought about learning to code before, you likely already know what a coding bootcamp is, but on the off chance that you don't, a coding bootcamp is sort of like a trade school for learning to code or learning another skill in the field of technology. Each bootcamp is so different, and they differ in curriculum and also the length of time it's going to take to complete them. So bootcamps are very popular for a lot of reasons, but what I've definitely seen is they're very popular for kids who are coming out of high school, and they're also popular for people who are going to be changing the direction of their career. So let's talk about some of the pros and cons for coding bootcamps, and we'll start with the pros. So the first pro that I have for coding bootcamp is it is right to the point. Coding bootcamps do not spend a lot of extra time on things that will not directly impact whether you're getting a job or not as a developer. So because they don't spend a lot of time on the extras and they really focus in on the things that you're going to need to know once you're done with bootcamp, you can expect what you're learning to be of the utmost importance for getting a job. My next pro is coding bootcamps are also great for career changers, like I said a few seconds ago. If you are currently working in a career already and you're thinking about switching it up and moving to software development or software engineering, coding bootcamps are typically flexible enough for you to be able to attend while you are currently working your other career. That way you don't have to give up your job and, more importantly, your source of income in order to be able to learn coding so that you can switch into development. Now, just because it's flexible enough doesn't mean that it's only going to take 1 or 2 hours outside of work. You are going to have to put in like a good amount of time still, but it's flexible enough that if you put in the time, it's something that you can do. The last pro that I have for coding bootcamp in comparison to a traditional college education is the cost. So coding bootcamps are generally less expensive than their traditional college education, and that combined with the fact that bootcamps also don't take as much time to complete can be a game changer for a lot of people. Now, less expensive doesn't necessarily mean cheap. Coding bootcamps vary wildly in their prices. I've seen some as low as $500 or $600 and some as high as about $15,000. The ones that are higher, I've seen that there are financing options to make your options a little bit more affordable, like paying month to month. Or something that you can also consider, and I think this toes the line between being self-taught and bootcamp, is taking a look at some of the bootcamp style courses that are found on sites like Udemy. I know that there are a few very popular ones that people really enjoy, and these are self-paced. So they're basically just videos, and then you can take yourself through the whole bootcamp at your own leisure. So some of these bootcamps vary wildly in price, but it's also important to keep sort of like in the back of your head that some bootcamps offer different amenities that others might not, and that might also be included in your cost of tuition for attending the bootcamp. So let's talk about some cons. So the first con is something that was very difficult for me when I went through a coding bootcamp, and it is that coding bootcamps are generally very fast-paced. Now, because it's taking a shorter time to complete and you're being hyper-focused on multiple different subjects, naturally, you're learning a lot of information in a very small amount of time. This is something that I really struggled with, and sometimes I felt like it was hard to just keep my head above water. But what you have to remember with coding bootcamps, you're not supposed to leave a coding bootcamp as an expert of the different technologies that you learned. Coding bootcamp is really there to expose you to different technologies, teach you how different technologies work together, and then when coding bootcamp is over, you're still going to have to do a little bit of learning and adapting on your own. But it'll be a little bit easier since you have a solid foundation on how these technologies already work and work together. And it's going to be your job to continue learning after bootcamp's over. So the next con that I have about coding bootcamp is the competition. So depending on the bootcamp that you're attending, some offer the guarantee that you're going to be getting a job as soon as you're done with their bootcamp program. Some provide showcases where they have companies come in and you have the opportunity to interview and show off what you've worked on. And some don't offer that at all. They just offer the educational piece, and it's up to you to go into the world and do all of the applying and everything like that. So what you'll find is not only are you sort of in competition a little bit with anybody else who's going to be entering the workforce with the same skill set that you've learned, but you're also in some ways going to be competing with some of your classmates or the people that you completed the bootcamp with. And I don't mean competition in a bad way. I mean, if an employer is coming in and they're looking at a group of people, how are you going to justify why they should hire you instead of somebody else that you also trained with, who also did the same projects as you, who also has the same knowledge as you? You're going to have to put in a little bit of extra time to put your own personal spin on your projects, or to go a little bit deeper into some of the technologies and concepts that you learned to give yourself an edge. So my next con is the learning curve. Many coding bootcamps advertise that their coding bootcamp is perfect for anybody who is an absolute beginner, no programming experience, little computer experience, yada, 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 everything like that. When I started my coding bootcamp, I, of course, had my degree and I was used to coding. I didn't code regularly for about, I would say, 2-ish years there, but I was still used to coding. I had a good foundation of programming concepts, and I found it really rough at the beginning to get back into that, and that's with the knowledge that I had previously. I think for somebody who hasn't coded before, you definitely are going to need to do a little bit of prep work. Typically, if you're going into a coding bootcamp, you know exactly what the curriculum is, and I would start off with some basic programming concepts, learning them and studying them before you actually go into the program. That way, when things start and when you start learning new concepts and those concepts compound on top of each other, you won't feel like you're drowning like I did when you're trying to keep track of everything, because everything's going to move so quickly. So I was taking a quick look at the Flatiron School, which is a popular company that does multiple different coding boot camps. And for their full-time program, they're expecting you to be able to have 45 to 50 hours per week to dedicate to the instruction time and completing projects and everything like that. Now, I will say that's like pretty on par with what I was doing when I was in my coding boot camp. I basically had classroom instruction from 9 to 5, and then whenever I wasn't in the classroom, I would literally come home, have dinner, have a snack or whatever, and then start working immediately and not finish and go to bed until 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock every single morning. And that went on for 10 weeks. If you don't have that amount of time to dedicate to a coding bootcamp, I would suggest looking for one that has a longer amount of time that you can use. Maybe instead of a shorter 3-month one, try taking a look at one that's 6 months. That way the content's going to be spread out more, so you have more time to complete items. The other thing is, when you are doing a very short program like that, even missing 1 or 2 days can really set you behind. In one of the days of instruction, we were configuring an AWS EC2, which is something that I found really confusing because I couldn't get it to work for a while. And just thinking back, had I missed that day, I don't think I would have been able to catch up. Trying to figure out how to configure the EC2 on my own, on top of everything else that we did that day, it just would have been too much almost. So let's talk about the efficiency of coding bootcamps. It's no secret that coding bootcamps really do work for some people, but just like colleges and universities, no two programs are built the exact same. With coding bootcamps, these bootcamps are typically offered by like a company that specifically does coding bootcamps, and no two companies are the same, so of course the companies are going to run their boot camps differently. If every company is running their boot camp differently, how can you be sure which boot camp is going to be good for you? Well, of course, do your research, but I would also say take it one step further and give the boot camp a call. These are things that I would ask a recruiter or somebody who's doing like admissions for the coding boot camp that will help you to be able to understand whether the boot camp that you're looking at might be a good fit for you. So let's take a look at some of them. I would ask what the exact technologies that you'll be learning are if it's not already obvious to you, because you don't want to go into a boot camp and realize that you didn't want to use those technologies or that those technologies aren't in demand for you to get a job. What qualifications do the instructors have? Are they people who have worked in the industry prior to being instructors? Will the instructors be available if assistance is needed outside of the classroom instruction time? What is the load of those projects and homework? Is it just going to be maybe 1 or 2 hours outside of the classroom instruction? Or are you going to have to dedicate a lot of time outside of class to complete the projects? What is the percentage of students that get a job immediately after boot camp, at 3 months after boot camp, and at 6 months after boot camp? This is going to be really important. I think this one is one of the most important questions that I would have asked. And with that, do you offer any assistance with job placement? I think that the Coding Bootcamp's responses to those questions will be able to help you sort of navigate and see if a specific coding bootcamp will fit your needs and be good for you. Now let's talk about being a self-taught developer exclusively. We're in a place in time where basically anything you could ever want to learn is at your fingertips. All we really need to do is Google, and I would say that Google has the answer to most of our questions. A common question that I often get is, can I get a job as a developer being exclusively self-taught? And the answer is yes, of course. Being a self-taught developer is really gonna come out to be exactly what you make it. So I think the pros and cons might be a little bit different for everyone, and my list for pros and cons for being a self-taught developer is significantly shorter than my list for coding boot camps and universities. But my first pro is that it's at your time and at your pace. We all have a lot going on in our lives, and sometimes we can't dedicate a specific amount of time continuously to be able to learn or to do something. So being self-taught means that you have the option to learn when you can learn, and you also have the option to conform how you're learning to how you learn best. Another pro, of course, is the cost. You can learn to code, I would say almost 100% free. And if not free, then there's very low cost involved. There's so many free resources online that you can use to learn how to code. I think my only con for strictly staying self-taught is that it's very independent. And personally, when I'm learning something, I like to have somebody that I can ask questions to in real time. Of course, you can ask questions on Stack Overflow, and Twitter is also a really great place to get a pretty quick response. But having somebody explain something to me and being able to hear it sometimes clicks a little bit better in my mind. I know not all people have that kind of dilemma where that's what they need. Being self-taught is really about choosing the direction and choosing the resources that are best for you. So the pros and cons that you have are going to be completely different from the pros and cons that I might have. So that's the list of pros and cons that I have for basically comparing whether you should go to college, whether you should attend a coding boot camp, or maybe whether you should just try to go at it on your own. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what road you take. And like I said before, a lot of times many of these roads wind together. So it's not like you're going to be taking one path exclusively for the whole time that you'll be learning. All three methods require a good amount of work. No path is significantly easier than the other because learning how to code is something that's pretty challenging. No one should tell you that one route is easier than another or that it's better than another. As always, you have to do your own research and do what's best for you. So I hope that you all enjoyed this video. I would love to know what your pros and cons are for all of the different sections that I talked about, and maybe you guys have different ones that I haven't thought about or that I might have missed. So go ahead and let me know in the comments below what your pros and cons are. And in the next video in the Dear Aspiring Dev series, we're going to go ahead and start talking about developer portfolios. So thank you guys so very much for watching. I hope that you all enjoyed this video. Make sure that you are subscribed with notifications so that you can be notified when the next video comes out. And I can't wait to see you all in my next video.